If you're looking for a new job in radio, the next 15 minutes are going to be very important for you. Hi, I'm AC Programming Specialist Gary Berkowitz, and this is 21 for 21. 21 programming ideas for the new year, 2021. And today we're going to talk about job loss. How does it feel? And more importantly, how do you go about getting your next job? My special guest today is somebody who has experienced this recently. Ron Harrell is a longtime programmer who found himself out of work just before the holidays. Now, for those of you who don't know Ron, very, very impressive resume, starting off in the small town of Jackson, Mississippi, and quickly moving up the programming ranks to Kim in Denver, regional operations manager for Cumulus in Detroit, then to Dallas as a regional programmer for CBS Radio, then Seattle at Warm 106.9, and today Ron is the vice president of brand content for the Way FM networks. Ron's going to talk to us today about how did it feel when he first found out that he had lost his position, and then some of the steps he took to pick his next job. So, Ron, my first question to you today is, when you lose your job, it takes most people, by surprise. What were your feelings, maybe moments after, you found out? How were you feeling?
The word you used is the word surprised, especially during, the pandemic downsizing. And we just weren't expecting it, just weren't ready for it, really. And that's the word. And, I went and I told my wife, and she kind of laughed. I mean, she's been through this before with me, we're town to town, up and down the dial at times. And she was like, really? And she thought I was joking. And I said, no, it's not a joke. And then she was like, oh, wow. So it was a surprise.
And I'm sure that you went through different phases. And by the way, I do want to add that this story does have a happy ending. So what I'd like you to talk about, maybe, what are the different phases you went through? Because you did lose your position just ahead of the holidays. On top of that was the pandemic, of course. But what were the different phases that you went through, as you were preparing for your next adventure?
Yeah, I think the first one was, as I said before, it was surprise. But at the same time, we had checked so many of the goal boxes, let's say, with that project, that I couldn't take it personally. But anybody who says, don't take it personally, well, they've never been through it. Of course, you're going to take it a little personally. But it was different in that there were so many successful things that had been done. It was just another reality of, this one's out of my hands. There's really not anything I could have done to control this or make it any differently. So that gives you a little solace for about 12 minutes. And then you're sitting there going, okay, now I got to find a gig. And I didn't listen to any of the radio stations in my cluster for 2 weeks. It's kind of a pattern that I go through, and said, I'm not going to listen to anything. I'm going to listen to just what I want to listen to, or really listen to nothing. And that kind of extended to about a month. And that was just a nice cleansing period to go, okay, let's walk away from this, do something else. And I have kids at home. They were out of school because of pandemic. We had no dead air time at all. Everybody had something to do and to be together. And I lived in one of the most beautiful places on the earth, the Pacific Northwest. So we used that time to go out and say, we haven't done this. Let's go do that. Let's go do that. Who knows what's coming up next if we're going to move. And those phases just kind of came and went. And I would tell anybody, be ready for the anger, the sadness, all of that comes along. If you don't have that, I don't think you're being honest with yourself. And so it was just more of a kind of a recycling of all of those that you would go through each time, and be willing to accept them is the best advice I can give you. And make sure you have somebody to talk to about that, whether it's a spouse or a parent or a mentor that you have out there in the business. Pick up that phone, pick up the Zoom, talk to them about it.
Ron, you had, because you and I spoke quite a bit over the weeks and months that you were out looking, and I would always get off the phone and say, God, I mean, Ron is so remarkable, because your attitude was, I think on some days you try to make me feel better about certain kind of things, and here you were the guy looking for the gig. And I was always amazed. I mean, was there a secret to keeping that positiveness going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm led by something that's higher than radio. I know we find that hard to believe, but there is something in my life that keeps me going that's bigger than all of this. And, that's a personal faith that I have, and that's always there. And then my personality is just, I'm more of a glass half full guy, I guess you could say. And I got that kind of William Shatner thing about me where I'm never, ever out of the ball game. I just never feel like that we're out of it. And there was so much silence. To begin with, my phone exploded, my emails exploded, all of that within that first couple of weeks, really in the first couple of months. And here's one thing that was different. During the pandemic, people were responding faster because they were sitting at home in their pajamas and they weren't going into the office, and they would see an email from me and they would go, oh, here, I'll reply right now. And so my emails weren't getting lost below the fold on a lot of people. And I've been doing this long enough that I know people and they were going to respond. But in that first month, really the first couple of months, there was just a lot of response and noise. And then it gets quiet. And then fourth quarter hits, and it's like you're making sure your phone didn't get turned off, And it's like, wait a second, there's nobody out there. So if I didn't have, my faith, if I didn't have my wife and my family and all of those things, it could be an ugly, lonely time. And one thing that I tried to do is talk to other people who were out of gigs. And I would even email people that I don't know. Their names would come up as the downsizing started. And I would be like, I don't know who you are, but if you ever need somebody to talk to, reach out to me and let me know. So part of that is giving back. At the moment you start feeling sorry for yourself, there's always somebody else out there who has a much worse situation. And that can take the heat off of you sometimes if you try to start talking to other people about stuff.
And I've got to think that you had some moments where maybe you were thinking, will I ever be in radio again? Based on the state of the economy, based on the pandemic and everything else that was going on. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, it is. I created a resume that tried to look as non-radio as it could, even though that's all my experience. But there were things that I was going to send out. I created a whole new email account that didn't have radio in the title as I was just looking around. And I talked to a couple of people about job situations that I had zero experience within that field, but I had a tremendous amount of leadership experience that I felt like I could help them out. I know several great programmers who have come out of this pandemic downsizing who have said, I'm done. And they moved on to something else. And maybe they had a spouse who was, doing real estate, and they decided to go work with them. This is the time to find out what else you can do and what else you want to do. I didn't want to leave this business, though. I really didn't. I still am motivated by the excitement of what comes out of the speakers and the devices and the video and all of that stuff. And I enjoy leading creative people who want to do that. So I didn't think I was going to walk away from it, but I didn't close that door immediately during this pandemic time, for sure.
So now you're back up and running. You're back in the middle of radio. What advice would you have for those people who are still looking for new positions? And maybe particularly talk a little bit about the importance of sometimes saying no to an offer if it's not the right one for you.
Yeah, the advice is to understand that the world is so different this time than maybe the last time you were looking for a gig. You think about 2020. I was going back through the last 25 years of jobs I've had, and this was the first year, that I didn't go to a Mariners or a Rangers or a Tigers or a Rockies game, or a Lions or Broncos or Cowboys or Seahawks, or go through all of the franchises. And it's the first time in 25 years that I haven't been to, one of those games or all of those games, depending on the market I was working in. That's a real difference that's going on in society. The other thing is, recreate yourself in the best way that you can, and be willing to take on more, and be willing to take on more for less, because that's just kind of where we are. And the things that haven't changed are, who you mentor with or who you network with as you're trying to find those things out. And you just talk to everybody. I took every phone call. I talked to anybody who recommended me about a job, even if it was something that I thought, no, I'm not going to work in that market. I talked to everybody. And what comes out of that is two things. One, you get experience interviewing again. You're a little rusty at it, maybe, depending on how long you've been somewhere. So you get some experience. The greatest benefit is what that person might know of something else on the other side for you. And you do all of the basics. You send thank you notes, and you send them a text once you get a job, and you say, hey, listen, I just want you to know this is what I'm doing now. Thank you for your time that you gave me back in July. It means a lot. You just never know when you're going to need to reach out to that person again at some point. And then the last thing I would say is find nature. That was it for me. And of course, I lived in one of the most beautiful places on earth, but every day I was going out and I was looking for beauty, and that helped my soul more than anything else.
Well, I for one know that you did a lot of nature walks, because I think when I would FaceTime you on our weekly little get-togethers and catch-up phone calls, half the time you were out walking somewhere, and I always knew because the video would flicker a little bit, but yeah, I think that's really, really good. So let me ask you this: tell me a little bit about your new gig.
Yeah, so I'm working with a group called Way FM, specifically Way Media Incorporated, and everything we do comes out of Nashville. But we have about 30 affiliates nationwide, and my fancy title is VP of Brand and Content. So anything that comes out of the speakers comes out of our video. We have a wonderful digital component called Way Nation. And some of the most passionate, creative people I have worked with, I'm finding in this building here in the last 3 weeks. So we are a mission-driven organization that is growing. And that's one thing that's kind of different in today's world of broadcasting. It's like, nope, we're planning to grow this thing. And what I'm doing is just what I've always done: lead people to create better content. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm 3 weeks into it and I'm having a great time. So I feel very blessed right now.
Well, Ron, I, for one, am so happy for you because I loved working with you and getting to know you over the years. And I guess my only downside to your new gig is that we don't get to work together. But, I know that we're going to keep our friendship going. And, hopefully over the years, maybe you've gotten some stuff out of me, but I will assure you that I've gotten a lot about life, a lot about just how to, handle yourself from you. So I thank you for that.
Gary, this relationship will continue. There's this newfangled thing called Zoom. I want you to Google it right now.
Zoom. And would you mind if I just wrote that down? Is it Zoom with a Z?
Zoom with a Z. Yeah.
Hey, Ron, we're on the Gary Zoom cam now. So.
It was great working with you, man. It's one of the best experiences I've had, in being able to say, hey, this is what I want to do. Help me do this.
So there you have it. Some awesome advice from Ron Harrell. And really, have you ever heard anybody or seen anybody who had a more positive, forward-thinking attitude than Ron? If you're out there looking for a job, watch this interview again and take everything Ron said because it did lead to his next position. If you're enjoying my programming videos, please let me know. I read every single comment that gets posted, whether it's on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube and you'd like to subscribe to my channel, just hit that big red button right below me that says subscribe, and this way you'll be informed every time I post a new programming video. My programming newsletter, AC Programming Today, is complimentary, and you can sign up for it at garyburke.com. Well, that's just about it for this edition of 21 for 21. As a side note, if you are looking for a new position, please feel free to reach out to me. Either call me in my office or email or any of the social medias. I would love to be able to help you in any way I can. We'll be back soon with another programming video. I'm programming specialist Gary Berkowitz, and I do thank you for watching.
Welcome to